Right, we're getting to the closing stages of our production pipeline. In this lesson, we're going to be making some final tweaks to the lighting elements, specifically the webcam glows, where the lenses are glowing a fairly bright green at this stage, and the warning light, which is creating a pin spot on our presentation, which I think is a little bit too strong. We're also going to tweak just the position on that little traffic light element folded on the ground there. So I'm going to move that to one side. We'll deal with that element first. We'll just click on it. It still needs to be grabbed as a whole, so click on our top view. We're going to activate our cam. So we've moved on to our perspective view, scroll down to set camera, and we're pressing either the hotkey F6 or using the show cam command. Grabbing all of that geometry in one go, and we're just simply going to drag it slightly forward in our shot. There we go, moving it forward, so we've got a nice balance there. We can click onto the screen there on the perspective view to see how it affects with the save frame. And we can afford to rotate that round slightly. So transform, left click, copy, just clicking the end of the traffic light and rotating it clockwise just a smidge. There we go. Double click on our view. That's a perfect position as far as I'm concerned. The next thing that we need to do is change the finishes on those webcam glows. In order to do that, we're going to go via the layer manager. We're going to scroll down to the cam lens layer. Then we're going to click on the material tab. And we can do it by allocating a fresh material, or we can edit the material. In this particular case, we'll use the edit command. We're going to modify the emissive, so I'm just going to bring that up. Currently the multiplier is set to 40. The glow is far too strong, so I'm going to take it right down to 1 again. I'm going to make it relatively transparent as well, so I want to reduce the amount of glow there is in there altogether. And we can also change the transparency of that material. So currently it's almost solid, so we can reduce that down using the grayscale bar on the diffuse layer. Preview that. You can see it's got slightly lighter, and now we can simply close that off. Click OK, and it's adjusted in position. The next item we need to change are those warning lights. So we're going to isolate our problem. We're going to select our light unit lamps. Select objects. You can see them selected on screen there. Then we're going to hide those out, and we're going to swap those out. So right click underneath the command. So just dig underneath the command. Let me see. Oh, it's gone back into position. So we're just going to repeat that command. So I've selected the light units. Selecting the light units now. There we go on screen. We're hiding them, digging underneath the command and going to the swap out. And at this point, I'm going to pause the video, but what I'll be doing is selecting the warning light elements themselves in the design and ungrouping things here and there as required, but I'm just going to isolate the problem. So all I've done while that's been paused to save a little bit of time on screen is I've used the mouse to select those warning lights individually. And on this section here, which it was still grouped, I used the ungroup command such that we just had individual geometry to select from rather than selecting the whole element. So now I have all the warning lights selected. I can allocate that material via objects. So I'm going to right click on my layers manager, pull that onto shot, and we're going to go to the properties tab, then the materials tab on there, scroll down and select material via object. We're going to change that to, currently that's the default material editor for Rhino. This time we're going to allocate it via the V-Ray plugin. So we'll click Browse and simply select the red light material or the red light glass material. So we can see it there, red light glass. Click OK, and we have everything completed. We can right click on the light bulb to bring all of our geometry back into view. And at that point, I'm just going to pause so we can do a test render to compare the results. So there's our test render in place, and you can see the results are significantly better. Those warning lights aren't so dominant on the screen now, they're just a soft element. Equally, the green glow on the webcams has now been reduced as well, so we have a subtler effect on the final image. The next element that we need to do is we're going to go back into our Options tab for V-Ray. Bring that onto shot, and currently the reflections are just looking a little bit too soft, so we're going to go into our environment setting, and you can see under the reflection refraction background tab there, it's currently set to 1. We're going to increase the impact of our background environment by taking that up to 4. There we go. Now we can see the current effect there. Once we re-render a test render on that, we can see the final result. So I'll just pause there. Now you can see by adjusting those environment settings on the reflection and refraction tab, we've significantly improved the influence of that background bitmap. So we can now leave that at that point, and we can now move down in our option setting to our final output. So we just go to our output settings, and currently we've been working at low resolution. I'm assuming in this particular case we want it for print reproduction. So in this particular case, for an A4 size output, we want to change those settings to 3500. Since this aspect ratio has been locked from the beginning, all we have to do is click, and you can see it's now changed to still a 2:1 format, but 3500 by 1750, which will give you a high quality print reproduction at 300 dpi for A4 print size. So we'll just set that at that point there. The other item we'll just check while we're at it is we'll open the VFB channels, and for the moment we can switch the alpha channel off. And we can scroll down. Let's just see if it's there. There it is. Just move up. We can also switch off the material ID for the moment. So we're just rendering the RGB output. We can close the material editor now, and we're going to pause there, and I'll render out the final output. So there you can see the completed rendering on my system. That took a little over 6 minutes, and we've got a nicely completed image ready for sending on to the client. So the last stage that's important, given the fact that we've only got the RGB channel up, is all we have to do is press the Save Image command and save it to an appropriate location with the appropriate view designation. So that will be V1 Ren or whatever is appropriate from your point of view. I'm just going to cancel. I'll save that for the time being, so I'll just put that in as V1 Ren. V1 Ren. That's fine. We'll just do it in caps. Ren image. Click OK. So at this point, that basically completes the series in terms of our rendering process. A couple of little additions at this stage is if you are doing work in post-production in Photoshop or the like, I would recommend switching off the background and figures elements and then re-rendering the image a second time with the VFB channels on, and I'll just indicate that, with the VFB channels on the alpha, which is at the very top, and the materials tab again, which we switched off before. So you'll see material ID. When you render these out, it will allow you the ability to isolate the image as required. But for the time being, this completes our rendered aspect within Rhino and V-Ray, so we're not going to render that out or proceed beyond that point. So we have a perfectly marketable image at this point in time. And we can then proceed to pass that directly on to the client. So in terms of this video series, what we've done is we've successfully modeled an industrial design concept from start to finish. We've become familiar with a range of Rhino surface and solid modelling tools. We've introduced Rhino lights and cameras, and we've become familiar with Rhino's native material editor. So we've got a clear understanding of how to complete this entire process within Rhino. We've also had an introduction to V-Ray, so we've looked at the options tab in V-Ray. We've introduced a whole variety of material options that have been allocated to our model in order to build an increased level of quality and detail in our design. And then we've composed that composition into a final rendered format that covers a whole variety of positions and configurations of our design into a aesthetically appealing composition. Okay, so at this point, I think it's been great for me to produce these videos for you all, and I trust this has been a successful learning experience for everybody. Okay.